Welcome in, Dween Nation. We are the Dween Sports Podcast, and we are just about to get started. But before we do, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, and share so we can continue to be your fantasy sports podcast. Thanks for being part of Dween Nation, and enjoy the show. Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, and yes, we are discussing Week 2 of college football. We're predicting through what I'd say is the top 8 games on the slate. Yes, it's probably not up to the hype, excitement, quality of matchups as we had in Week 1, where we had Ohio State, Texas, LSU, Clemson, Notre Dame, Miami, things like that. But there's still some really, really good games that we need to discuss. Obviously, you see here on the screen share that we got Oklahoma, we got Michigan, John Mateer, Bryce Underwood. We'll dive into that game as we get through the rest of them. But let's start. Let's get into it, because we start with Illinois and Duke. And I think this game is actually going to be a super close, to the wire kind of game, because you got Illinois from the Big Ten, you got Duke in the ACC, and I just think both teams showed out pretty well in Week 1. Luke Altmaier obviously is the Illinois quarterback. He threw for 217 and 3 scores. Yes, it was against Western Illinois, but both of these teams didn't play anybody. Duke played Elon, 145-17. So I think looking at Week 1, they both played well, obviously, but what can you really take away to see which side gets the edge? Obviously, Duke is the home team in this game, but I really like Darian Minza. I think that him in this offense, Manny Diaz, the coach, I think he's a really solid coach too, coming from Penn State. But Minza, man, coming from Tulane, he finds himself here at Duke. You get to play, Luke Altmaier and this Illinois team who had, Hank Beatty, wide receiver for Illinois, had over 100 yards in Week 1. But they both have good threats on each side. Gosh, this one's a really tough one, because I think Illinois has more continuity than Duke does this year. But it is Week 2, and I feel like a lot of people are just completely sleeping on this weekend, because it's not Week 1. It's not what we saw in Week 1. And, a lot of teams are just not playing big-name opponents. What is it? Ohio State's playing, now I don't even know. But Texas A&M, for example, I know that off the dome. They're playing against, Utah State. Then you got, I literally have the notes here, so literally give me 1 second. I have the full list rundown of who is playing who for this week. Right, so we got Ohio State against Grambling. Yeah, we have Ohio State against Grambling. We have Penn State against Florida International. We got LSU versus Louisiana Tech, Georgia versus Austin Peay, Miami against Bethune Cookman. So there's really Texas plays San Jose State, Clemson, Troy. I could go down and down, but there's a lot of our top teams aren't playing top tier opponents. So that's why we got this game to start us off. And with everything I've been talking about, Darian Minza, Luke Altmaier, Brett Bielema versus Manny Diaz, I'm gonna go with the upset, and I'm gonna go with the Duke Blue Devils to surprise some people and take down a ranked opponent. I mean, Illinois is literally ranked 11, and I think that this game will come down to the wire. I do not think it'll be a high scoring, definitely under 48 combined points kind of game. But I'm gonna give the edge to Duke. I like their quarterback a lot, and we'll move to the next game. Baylor, SMU. I think this game's going to be higher scoring than even that Auburn Baylor game was last week. I think that both teams have really solid offenses. Sawyer Robertson last week against Auburn threw 419 and 3 touchdowns. And yes, you may argue that, he had to. I mean, they were down in the game and he had to try to make a historic comeback. And Dave Aranda's defense did not help him in one slight bit. But I think that how that offense performed, they're going to be in every game. And I think that Dave Aranda will do a better job of coaching this defense. And if you look at the SMU side, I like Rhett Lashley, their coach. I think he's really solid. Obviously, SMU made the college football playoff last year. But Kevin Jennings, last week, they played Eastern Texas A&M University, and it wasn't that pretty. I mean, they won – what did they win? They won 42-13, so, a solid victory there. But, he had 2 turnovers. Kevin Jennings did, their quarterback. Their rushing yards per game, 4.2 per carry against Eastern Texas A&M. Nothing too exciting. Their wide receiver did good. Romello Brinson, 7 catches, 121 yards and a score. So I think this is really tough. And the reason Auburn was so successful against Baylor last week is because of Jackson Arnold's legs, and Kevin Jennings can do that as well. Plus, it's a home game, but I think that we're going to have a little bit of a different setup here, and I think Baylor improves off of the loss in week 1. Obviously, they were tested against an SEC opponent, so I'll take Sawyer Robertson and Baylor to get the victory over SMU. That is the second-ranked team to go down through 2 games thus far. We'll move to the next game, Iowa versus Iowa State. I think this game is going to be so both teams are really good at running the football, especially what we've seen thus far this year. I mean, I'm looking at the stats here. Iowa State last week had 223 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, 5.3 yards per carry. That's really impressive. And then you look at Iowa. I had their rushing stats down too, but they literally can't pass the ball. Mark Gronowski had only 44 yards passing, 8 for 15. He did have 2 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 rushing. But like this rushing attack here, I found the stat I wrote down. 310 rushing yards as a team and 3 touchdowns. That's pretty impressive there. And I think Iowa just, to me, doesn't have that like last year they had Caleb Johnson though, who you could really count on, rely on. And I think that both teams are really going to focus on stopping each other's run game. And so then it will, to me, come down to the quarterbacks. And although Rocco Beck didn't have the best first game in week 0 against Kansas State, last week he stepped up, only had 1 incompletion on 20 pass attempts for 270 yards, 3 touchdowns. Iowa State's kind of been on a upwards trajectory since Matt Campbell showed up, their head coach. They had their first 11-win season last year in program history. But there is some history against them. They have not beaten Iowa at home in 14 years, since September 10th, 2011. So I think that this game for Iowa State definitely has a lot of juice in it because they really want to get that home win against, their in-state rivals. So I think Iowa State's going to come out with the victory here. It's going to be by Rocco Beck having a really good performance. I also think, though, similar to the first game, Illinois and Duke, I think this game will be a bit lower scoring. But give me Iowa State to get the victory there. We move to Ole Miss and Kentucky, our first SEC on SEC game this season. And last year, obviously, was the big upset of Kentucky taking down Ole Miss at Ole Miss 20-17. It was obviously one of those games that just kind of came out of nowhere. I'm sure it did for Ole Miss as well. And they lost. You move into this year. 2 new quarterbacks at the helm. You got Zach Calzada on the Kentucky side. You got Austin Simmons on the Ole Miss side. Obviously, there's a clear winner there of who's the better quarterback. It is Austin Simmons. If you look at how Ole Miss did last week, they played Georgia State, so nothing like too much to take away from it, but 60-37 victory. Austin Simmons had 340 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have 2 INTs. He did fumble, so a little bit turnover happy, which could be super helpful for Kentucky if they want to keep this game close and kind of sneak one away, even though they are home. But Lane Kiffin, besides last year, he had 3-0 against Mark Stoops. Kentucky last week, they didn't play a Georgia State kind of team. They played Toledo, who's actually pretty solid, but it did not look good for Zach Calzada in Kentucky. He only threw for 85 yards. He had 1 rushing touchdown, no passing TDs, an interception, and was under 50% completion percentage. So that wasn't great. Where they were able to attack and win the game was through the run game with Dante Dowdle and Seth McGowan. Over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns between them both on 6.5 yards per carry. I think that'll be kind of what helps Kentucky if they're able to keep the ball away from Ole Miss, running the football. But I'm just going to kind of bring it down to, obviously, the coaches I think are both really solid. I know Stoops and Kentucky haven't been like great of recent note, but I think that this quarterback, Austin Simmons, I think he's much better than Zach Calzada, and I just don't see Calzada putting together enough to take down Ole Miss. So I am going to go with Ole Miss to win here. And no, this ranked team will not lose in week 2 of the season. We'll move to the next game, Kansas and Missouri, and I absolutely love this game. It's the border war between Missouri and Kansas. Missouri fans, Kansas fans, they've been talking about this game. This is, to me, a rivalry game that just didn't happen last year, I don't believe. But it's something that's been fuming, and I think this game is going to blow over and be a really great watch. I mean, if you look at it, obviously Kansas played in week 0. They played last week. They dominated them both, but they were against Fresno State and Wagner. Nothing too crazy there, but Jalen Daniels is playing really good football. 456 yards, 7 TDs, 1 pick. He started out the season really good, which he had done in the past. Was it last year or the year before he had that injury that kind of sidelined the season? But him and Lance Leipold, I think they're really good, a good combo together. But if you look at Missouri, I'll be totally candid with you. Last week, I was worried I knew they were going to beat Central Arkansas, but I've just been worried going into the season about what we could see from Missouri, all the discussions about multiple quarterbacks, Bo Pribula, Sam Horn. But yeah, Sam Horn does go down to injury, and Bo Pribula steps in and is really, really good. I think that he totally cemented himself as a possible, as the possible it guy for Missouri this season. And I just think that he's going to take it. He's going to take this job out of the reins and really just become the guy. They have really good weapons around him. They got Marquise Johnson, who had over 100 yards and a touchdown. He had that long touchdown. Kevin Coleman Jr. is going to be really good. He was a good transfer coming in. And then Ahmad Hardy, the running back, had over 100 yards. He had 100 yards and a rushing touchdown. Eli Drinkwitz, he's a good coach. And they're home. But Kansas has the history here, winning 15 of the last 20 games against Missouri, 8 of the last 10. So they dominated Missouri. And I just think that, I don't want to say history doesn't mean anything, but we're going to pass history here, and I do think Missouri is going to win this football game. I think it's going to come down to their defense against Kansas's defense, and I don't see Kansas's defense. I know it's like crazy to say not to hold Bo Pribula, but I think that what I saw from Missouri's offense was super impressive, and really they won that game 61-0 last week. It was a late 22 seconds left in the game, garbage time touchdown for Central Arkansas. So really Missouri pitched a perfect game last week, besides the last 20 seconds. So I'm going to go with Missouri to win this one. We'll move to the next one, Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech. I love this game. Obviously, Virginia Tech, they played really sloppy, was not able to get anything going on offense against South Carolina in Atlanta last week, and they lose 24-11. So it was ugly. It was ugly, but I think South Carolina is just a really solid team. And then if you look at Vanderbilt, they got a lot going for them. Last year obviously was such a great year to Vanderbilt standards, going from a 10-loss team to a 6-loss team. And now you're looking at Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers, and you're like, this is actually pretty good. I mean, and if you look at Virginia Tech's matchup last weekend, when they played South Carolina, Lenore Sellers only completed 12 passes, but half of them went to tight ends. And who is Vanderbilt's best pass catcher? It's a tight end in Eli Stowers. So I think Vanderbilt's going to take advantage there. And last year, Vanderbilt won the same matchup. Now, it was in Vanderbilt, and it was in overtime. So Virginia Tech, they probably feel the heat of this game, the tension between these teams. But I'm gonna give the edge to Clark Lea over Brent Pry, over Kyron Drones, who I know I've talked about Virginia Tech struggles, but he did really struggle. 15 for 35, 2 picks, no touchdowns. So I am going to pick Vanderbilt. I hope they're not. I hope this isn't a trap game. It could possibly be a trap game for Vanderbilt. They head to Columbia to play South Carolina literally next week. So if they're looking ahead, they could get sniped here, but I do think Vanderbilt's the better team, a better roster, better coach, better quarterback. And yeah, so I'm going to go with Vanderbilt to win this one. And I think it'll be actually not as close as we saw in South Carolina, or against South Carolina for Virginia Tech last week. We move to the game of the week, the cover of this episode, and that is Michigan against Oklahoma. And I think that this game, although in 2024, obviously both of these teams underwhelmed, except Michigan winning that last game against Ohio State and then beating Alabama in the bowl game. But these two teams, they got a lot of differences this year. Obviously, a new quarterback for both. One's a true freshman. One's a transfer in John Mateer, who had a really good week. Now, they did play Illinois State, so that's just a cakewalk of a team. He did throw a pick against them. They won 35-3. I could even see them do better than that. So I'm not overly impressed from what we saw from Oklahoma in week 1. But the same story goes for Michigan. They played a harder team in New Mexico, the Lobos, and they won 34-17. It was Bryce Underwood's first game as a collegiate athlete, so I don't want to dive too hard onto that. But if it's not going to be from Bryce Underwood, it will come from former Alabama product Justice Haynes. He was so good in their game against New Mexico. 16 carries, 159 yards, 3 scores, 2 catches. So he was really everything for them. And I think if they want to win this game, as much as they kind of want Bryce Underwood to take over and be a pro Heisman candidate, true freshman, I'm not going to project that to happen in this game. So I think Michigan's goal is to play good defense and run the ball with Justice Haynes. And if you look at the Oklahoma side, for the people in Norman, for game day, for fans, you guys need to win this football game for Brent Venables' sake. Maybe if you're a fan, obviously you want to win every game you can, but I don't think personally that Brent Venables is the guy. I don't think he's going to ever win you the Sooners national championship. I don't think he'll ever put together a successful college football playoff run. I just don't think he's that coach. And it's contrasting because I really like John Mateer and the talent he has. I like Jordan Ott, who they've been easing back into the lineup. He didn't really play last week because of injury. And they struggled against an Illinois State defense, only at 3.2 yards per carry for just 100 yards rushing as a team. So I think that they need Ott to return. I don't know how much usage he will get, but if he's a full go, that helps big time for OU. And yeah, what it comes down to in this game is really it being in Norman, Oklahoma, at Gaylord Stadium, at true freshman quarterback and Bryce Underwood going to an SEC opponent on the road at night. It's too many variables for Michigan. I know Sharon Moore will be coaching this game. He will not be suspended for this game. But I think it's just going to be it's really tough to ask Bryce Underwood, although he's that big money NIL recruit. He switched from LSU to Michigan. It was big news. I think it's tough to say that they're going to pull it out here. But if they do, that is absolutely huge. Super important for Bryce Underwood. If he gets the victory there, his stock rises to the moon. And that'll be flip side for OU. Not for John Mateer. I don't expect Mateer to struggle too much. But Brent Venables, if you lose this game, man, that hot seat is hot. It'll be very hot. And that's why I just can't see them falling short. They're going to put everything into this game. And so I will go with the Oklahoma Sooners to win this football game in a close slugfest kind of game. But that's what I got for you there. We have one more game. Not as exciting as that main event there, but UCLA plays UNLV. UNLV, obviously, week 1 barely wins at home. Then they play Sam Houston. They get back on track. They look good. UCLA last week with Nico Iamaleava, they got smoked by Utah. And Utah's a good football team, but I just think that Nico and UCLA are going to struggle this year. And I think UNLV is going to be good enough. They're putting all those transfer pieces together with Dan Mullen, trying to corral a good, solid rock. And I think that they will pull this off. I do think it'll be so much closer than UCLA-Utah, but I will take UNLV to get the victory there. And with that, those are my 8 games. Now, next week, obviously, is going to be a bigger week. I will always finish my show. Hopefully some Aggie fans are watching, or just college football fans. But the Aggies, my Texas A&M Aggies, play the Utah State Aggies this Saturday in the morning. But I think it's going to be a lot better of a showing than what we saw against UTSA. I think we saw Marcel Reed be able to show that he can throw the ball, and I think it'll be a similar setup as it was to last week. I think they don't want to overuse Le'Veon Moss as he continues to ease back from the injury, and I think that they're going to cover. It's a 31.5 point over-under, and I think that they're going to dominate, especially defensively. That's where kind of my eyeballs are looking at. Can the defense really just dominate against a much inferior opponent? So I'll take the Aggies, obviously, to win that game and cover. But Dween Nation, that is my college football predictions for week 2 of the season. Keep staying tuned for stuff. I've been posting a ton of fantasy football content. Me and Genoa, my co-host, we had stuff here on the YouTube. If you're watching, there's other episodes to watch to help you with your NFL lineups because that starts on Sunday. but also TikTok, man. We just hit over 500 followers. On Instagram, we just had a video hit over 13,000 views. So we're on the upward. We're on the upward spin here. But thank you guys for listening. If you have any comments about college football, about anything, drop them below. If you want me to talk about any specific teams, drop it below. But excited to improve off of a candidly poor week 1 record prediction performance for college football for me. This week will be much better, and I'll just get right back on track. But anyways, thank you guys for listening, and as always, peace.